This is Lightning Power Lunch, presented by Reef Rum on the Lightning Audio Network with Dave Mishkin and Greg Linnelli.
Listen, this is a game 5 of a 5-game trip. And, you know, we played like 3 road games. Basically, we've been 9 games in 9 different cities. And for the guys to, you know, take all but an overtime loss in one is, I got to tip my cap to them. It's been a pretty damn good effort by them. And, you know what I'm probably most proud of, and maybe it doesn't look great on the score sheet all the time, but, you know, it's a 2-goal game going into the third period, and we held what I consider an exceptional team to, you know, 2 shots in the third period. So guys have, they know what's working, and they're really performing.
This has really been an incredible 47 games to start a season, factoring everything that's gone into play, not least of which has been the fact that this team has been just incredible on the road. 18 wins and beating some really good teams along the way. We're going to talk about what that means, where the Lightning are. Home game on Tuesday and then back on the road. Ed and Cena had an interesting article in the Tampa Bay Times a couple of days ago talking about the real condensed schedule will be when they come back from the Olympics, and I think that'll be very telling in many ways. We had a major trade that did happen yesterday in the NHL, so maybe is that a portent of things to come, partner, when you start talking about teams maybe trying to make a move now? We will talk about all of that, but we are taping here on MLK Junior Day, so we are here.
Yes,
and
happy MLK Junior Day to you.
That's right, and here we are. Partner, great to be with you. Little different, had a chance to do those games with Phil, you know,
getting
which
back
was
on
nice.
the bicycle there.
Yeah, didn't miss a beat. It was it sounded really good, and more importantly, the Lightning getting more wins. But collectively, let's maybe kind of reset here and talk about what we saw yesterday, that 30,000-foot view, and then we can kind of get into specifics. Dallas has always been a really good team. I don't want to say they mirror Tampa Bay in terms of their makeup, but, you know, they've got a really good goaltender. They've got good young players. They've got some veterans who are very accomplished. Just they've never been able to get over the hump during this, you know, last 5 to 7 years where they've been one of the better teams. But I think all things considered, the Lightning once again using some timely saves from Vasi, and then, you know, being able to pounce on some opportunities. It was good to see Dominic James, you know, do what he did, and another goal by the Holmberg Gord line along with Gergensen.
Yeah,
so,
empty
curious
netter.
your thoughts.
Yeah, the Stars pulled the goalie fairly early, so you had to run through, if you're the Lightning, 2 rotations of the 5-on-6. Normally we see Hagel, Cirelli, and Kucherov out there on the 5-on-6, and they were out there on the 5-on-6, and Kucherov was upset with himself because he missed, probably to him, what was a gimme empty netter. He was sitting at the bench berating himself, it looked like. But then the Lightning had to switch players, so they got the Gord line out there, and Holmberg rewarded with an empty netter for a new career high, 8 goals. So congratulations to him. Even beyond what we saw yesterday, this run for the Lightning, and I'm really talking about the point run, the 12-0-1 stretch, has the vibe of the 23-2-1 run the Lightning had in the 2019-2020 regular season. That is basically like, that was longer, obviously. So what did I just say? 23-2-1. So that's 26 games. Has been half of that, 13. But it coincided, like it started around the same time. It started right before Christmas in 2019 into 2020. And this one started right around the same time, right? So just before Christmas. And what I'm seeing is the Lightning, it doesn't matter whether it's a back-to-back. It doesn't matter if they've had travel. It doesn't matter if the opponent is playing well, playing poorly, somewhere in between. It doesn't matter if the Lightning maybe have a scheduled loss. It doesn't matter if the Lightning might be excused if they had a little bit of an exhale moment, which I thought might happen yesterday, and a little bit of a letdown. They are just, I mean, it starts with defense. So they're defending at an incredibly high level, which is helping them limit opposition chances and keeping games close. But in most of these games, I mean, they are just like imposing their defensive will on the other team. Now, in some games, they're erupting for 6-7 goals. In other games, they're getting one, like in the Pittsburgh game. I think that there have been a couple of games where, the stats tell us they probably were a little fortunate to win. Their home game against Montreal comes to mind, and they were down late in the LA game at LA and rallied to win. But I mean, if you take out those two games, every one of the other games, they've been right there, And that reminds me of that incredible stretch the Lightning had, and like all good things come to an end. Like even then, I think the Lightning heading into the season pausing were 3-6-1. So they kind of hit a point where they reached a point where they had established a solid standings position, and then their play dipped a little bit, and it's normal. It's human nature. Now we've seen them play at a higher level in the playoffs, but this is different. This is the regular season. And I think that this stretch is better than what we saw from them in the regular season in 2021, which was a cup winning season. That was the shortened season because we started the season late, right? We started in January. They played 56 games, and the Lightning got off to a good start that year and then kind of cruise controlled it, frankly. And they were like, let us know when the playoffs began. Playoffs began, and they elevated. But they're playing machine-like hockey right now, Greg. And, I mean, that is incredible to see when you're into basically the dog days of the regular season. So let me just address the condensed schedule, because this was something Ed had it in there because Julian provided the information in the Fireside Chat. And it's not like I asked every question in the Fireside Chat, but I asked that question. So I'm going to give myself credit for – you're welcome, Ed. I asked the question. Julian gave the information. Ed used it in his article. So what I asked was, do you expect that the Atlantic Division and maybe the Eastern Conference as a whole is going to stay as tight as it's been, considering that things are going to really get crazy in terms of a condensed schedule after the Olympics? Because I said, Coop had said, we're not really at a condensed schedule yet. And that's when Julian pulled out the information. So what he said was, and if you have the article up, you can correct me if I'm wrong on some of the info. But he said the last season that we had, excuse me, where there was no tournament, like this year we have the Olympics, last year we had the Four Nations. So the last year that we had where there was no interruption in the season except for an all-star game was 23-24. And he's like, the first half of the season was played this year as compared to 23-24 in one fewer day. So basically the first half is exactly the same. It's the second half. So I think the second half is being played in 14 fewer days. So the whole season is going to take place in 15 fewer days. And really much of that is going to be after the Olympics. And the Lightning are not immune to that. I mean, the Lightning are still on the lower end of games played in the entire league, which means that they're going to be making up those games. And when are they going to be making up those games? We know that from now to the Olympic break, it's not like they have a crazy busy schedule. They have one back-to-back left. And that back-to-back this upcoming week is a schedule where they play Tuesday, Friday, Saturday. So it could have been Tuesday, Thursday, Saturday, right? I mean, it's not like they're squeezing in extra games. And then they have a long homestand. They play the last 5 games before the Olympic break at home. So, I mean, there are no back-to-backs there. So it's really after they come back from the break that things are going to be condensed. But as Julian said, every team is going to go through that. Every team has a condensed schedule. It's not like the Lightning are playing like 5-6 fewer games than other teams around the league. So can they maintain this level of machine-like play when the schedule really gets condensed? I mean, that would be amazing. I think that is probably unlikely, but it's also probably unlikely that all these other Atlantic teams that are getting points like crazy.
I mean, Detroit.
I'm separating Atlantic,
right? You know?
Atlantic from Metro.
Right.
Because not all the Metro teams are keeping pace right now. But in the Atlantic, if you have two teams in the Atlantic playing each other, it feels like it's going overtime. I mean, Ottawa had 2 games over the weekend against Atlantic teams, and they were disappointed because they didn't win either, but they got points out of both. They lost in overtime to Montreal, and they lost in overtime to Detroit. Look, the fact that Detroit is winning and doing really well and basically keeping pace with the Lightning or vice versa, like as it relates to getting in the playoffs, which is the most important thing, does it really matter that Detroit is doing as well as the Lightning? They are both in the top 3. Like, if you're going to look at it, it's more about the teams below the top 3. Are those teams going to start dropping off? And that just has not happened. Buffalo keeps winning. Boston keeps winning. Montreal is in the top 3. Montreal keeps winning. Toronto is winning. They had a bad blowout loss against Utah, but other than that, they just keep getting points. Florida's been a little up and down, but they're hanging in there, and, you know, they have the pedigree, I guess, that you can say they're going to make a push. You know, they're going to get Matthew Tkachuk back fairly soon. You know, that should help them, and they're not going to, like, stand by and just let, you know, their chance at a three-peat slip through their fingers, I think. You know, they're going to make a strong push down the stretch. Ottawa's really the one team that seems to be losing ground, but even Ottawa, you know, they're cobbling together points. So I don't know if that's going to continue as the schedule gets condensed. Some teams are just going to have flat games and lose. That's just what we expect. So the fact that the Lightning are banking points now is really beneficial, and they are already banking bonus points for next 10-game segment. Yeah. What are they at, 64 points? They needed to get to 60 through 50 games. They're at 64 points. So they already have 4 bonus points, and they have, 3 games left in this 10-game segment. So all of that is really positive. Just to put it in perspective, Greg, from games 51 to 60, the Lightning need to get to 72 points by the end of game 60. They are already at 64 points. They're only 8 points away from playoff pace after 60 games. So they need to keep doing what they're doing, certainly. But as tight as the Atlantic has been, as much as those teams keep winning, no team is at the pace the Lightning are at right now. And they're benefiting from the 12-0-1 stretch. I didn't really get into the games over the weekend, but that was kind of what I was thinking about last night. Like, that third period against Dallas, that was a clinic that they put on. That's why Coop talked about it, because that makes the head coach very happy to see a performance like that when you're on the road. You're up 2. You don't want the other team to make a push. And, I mean, the Lightning just suffocated the life right out of Dallas in that third period.
I think it's the way they're winning games. Been very impressive. You know, we've seen spurts over the years where the Lightning put good stretches in, but consistently to be this solid defensively. And, you know, I think Eric brought up the point. I think you have mentioned this. We have talked about it on our show. Some of this is the Lightning playing with the puck, too. Keeping the puck in. You know, we've always talked about sometimes that's their best defense is a good controlling offense. But I just think whatever is going on right now, why it's clicking for whatever reason, I think you and I have our own theories. Mine certainly is, I do think when you have that many players go down who are impactful, particularly on the back end, I do think to some degree the guys replacing them have to keep it simple and not be too cute in your own zone when you're trying to get the puck out. Now, certainly we have seen that at times this year where the Lightning don't make the right play and the other team converges and ends up costing the Lightning a goal or two. But I think that happens for every team in an 82-game season. I've just been impressed to maintain this type of excellence basically for most of the year outside of what we saw at the beginning of the season. This has been a pretty consistent stretch, and I guess the conclusion I'm making, partner, is this is no fluke.
No.
You know, and I think that's what's... You have to get used to saying that because, again, I'm not at least always looking at the Lightning as a team who is really, maybe suffocating isn't the right word, but playing very detailed and doing the right things defensively game in and game out, because I do think at times there can be lapses. But this has been a pretty consistent flow of play that has me surprised, and the only logical conclusion you take from that is, okay, this is for real. This is for real what they're doing, and teams better buckle up for a full 60-minute venture against the Lightning, knowing that they're going to be in your face and they're going to make life difficult. It's not always going to happen throughout the course of a game, but for the most part, the Lightning know what they want to do, and they're executing at a pretty high level.
They're playing with swag. Like, they're playing with confidence. They're playing like they believe that they are going to go out on the ice and outplay the opponent, which the opposite was happening in early December, where that was really about goal scoring, but you could see that they were frustrated. They were snake bitten. They needed something good to happen, and the good thing that happened was they rallied to beat Carolina. That was the first game in this point streak, and I keep going back to that game where kind of the floodgates opened. They made plays. They got rewarded, and they beat a really good team. And they've taken off ever since then.
Yeah.
So can they keep it going? They're going to try and extend this as long as they can, right? And, you know, if we're still saying heading into the Olympic break, this Olympic break is not coming at a good time for the Lightning, then we know that they will have, like, ran this thing right through the finish line heading into the break. We'll see. They have 8 games left. And the majority of them are going to be at home, right? Because they've done all of this heavy lifting on the road. This is one of the 2 toughest stretches in the schedule the Lightning have had this year. I know I said it at the start of the year. This stretch of 8 of 9 on the road and then 10 of 12 on the road, which they still have 2 road games left, and then the one right after the Olympic break. I think it's 9 of 14 on the road. So, I mean, to say they've got an A+ going through this first stretch, even if they don't win the remaining 3 games, we can say, like, this was a tremendous stretch for them. So let's start with the Dallas game, because I thought the Lightning might be in store for a little bit of a letdown in that game. It was an afternoon game. They just had the win streak end. They were facing a good team that had been scuffling a little bit, honestly. Dallas is a good team, but had just 2 wins in the previous 11. It's not like they were 2-9. They were, I think, 2-5-4 or something like that. Yeah. So they gotten some points from overtime losses, and they're still in second place in the Central Division, well behind Colorado, but in good position to make the playoffs. And as you said, Greg, they have an objectively good team. Their power play is fantastic. Wyatt Johnston leads the NHL in power play goals.
Yeah.
Randon has 22 power play assists, is on pace for a career high in points, which is amazing to think about because it's not like he just came out of nowhere. Like, he's been a great player in the league for quite some time. Jason Robertson has 27 goals. Heiskanen is producing points like crazy. And, you know, they're one of the better defensive teams in the NHL too. So they were facing a good team that was motivated to get back on track. And the Lightning were at the end of a long road trip, and the win streak was over. So what happened? They did not have a great start. Even before the goal was scored by Beck, the Lightning were getting leaned on a little bit. But the goal that was scored, the Lightning had their fingerprints on, in that they had 2 chances to clear. Radish tried to rim it up the boards, and a Stars player had a stick in the way, so it didn't get out on the first try. But eventually it found Nick Paul's stick.
Right.
Paul tries to get it out and got stripped by Beck. So it gets reversed. Now the Lightning are out of position because when you turn the puck over, when you think you're coming out of the defensive zone, you are going to be out of position because you're not in the position that you would be in if the other team has the puck. So there were some open spots. Maverick Bourque found Niels Lundqvist, who took a shot. It squeezed through Vasilevsky's pads, and this was a little reminiscent of the Moser goal in Pittsburgh. Remember where Rickard Rakell peeled away, didn't see the puck, or gave up on the play. This is a little different because in that one, Shilovs had the puck in front of him. This one, Vasilevsky has the puck behind him. But again, Paul peeled away.
Right.
Beck didn't, saw it, slammed it in. It's 1-0. It might have been the next shift. It wasn't the next shift. It was the shift after the next shift. Chernak gets called for a penalty. So now you're taking on the number 2 power play in the NHL. You're already down 1-0, and you're in jeopardy of falling behind 2-0. But the Lightning killed the penalty. It was a great kill. Fantastic kill. I mean, they kept getting it down the ice, down the ice, down the ice, down the ice. So when Braden Point was hurt, John Cooper decided to pull Nick Paul from a line with James and Bjorkstrand and put him onto a line with, at the time, Kucherov and Gensel.
Right.
They were a line in the Pittsburgh game they were relying in the first half of the St. Louis game. The line, frankly, struggled a little bit. Now, I think Paul might have taken the -1 in Pittsburgh. I'd have to go back and look, but for sure that line was -2 in the St. Louis game. They were out on the ice for both those goals that came 30 seconds apart. Was Nick Paul to blame for either one of those goals? No. In fact, on the first goal that was scored in St. Louis, I'm talking about by Jake Neighbors, Paul makes a good play. Paul gets his stick in the way of a Kyrou shot attempt. It was just bad luck. But the line had to eat a -2 in that game because the 2 goals the Lightning scored were both on the power play. In fact, in that game, after the Lightning fell behind 2-0, Coop made a swap. He moved Kucherov onto the line with Hagel and Cirelli. He moved Gage Gonçalves onto the line with Gensel and Paul. So the Dallas game starts with Paul centering a line of Gensel and Gonçalves. I think they had a little bit of a weird change there because I want to say that Hagel and Kucherov were out on the ice with Paul on the Beck goal. But Paul had his fingerprints on that goal. So Lightning kill the penalty. Coming out of the kill, Coop sends out Kucherov, Gensel, James. Now, the Kucherov part, he didn't kill the penalty. So it's not uncommon for Coop, after a penalty is up, to throw Kucherov out there. I'd have to go back and look. I'm not sure Gensel saw any time in that penalty kill. If he did, he was fresh. He must have had some time earlier in the kill. But for them to decide to send James out, maybe it was just he was looking for a spark, whatever. But that's an elevation for James. They come on the ice, Destu outlets to James. He and Gensel attack the offensive zone. Give and go, James gets it back, shoots it in. 1-1. As Coop said afterward, that was a huge goal. Came 4 minutes and 4 seconds after the Stars had grabbed the lead, and right after the Lightning got through a penalty kill. They never trailed again. And what also never happened again was James moved back to the fourth line. James stayed in a top 6 the rest of that game. And on that particular goal, it was with Gensel and Kucherov, but for the rest of the game, basically, he played with Gensel and Gonçalves. And they kept Kuch with Hagel and Cirelli. That goal changed the complexion of the first period and really the rest of the game. Then the Lightning had a pretty good rest of the first period until the end of it. And then they had 3 mistakes / good plays made by the Stars where Vasi came up with 4 saves. He stopped Rantanen on a backhand right at the hash marks, where Rantanen makes a good knifing move to the slot. Crozier is being hounded by Ritzkovian and loses an edge. And Ritzkovian gets 2 in-alone chances. Vasi stops both. And then during a 4-on-4, Kucherov tried a drop pass in the offensive zone. Jason Robertson steals and gets a breakaway. And Vasi stopped that. So I'm not sure the Stars really had a lot going from the time that Beck scored until that last little stretch in the first period. But they finished with 9 shots, and 4 of them came. Those are the 4 I just described for you. And Vasi stopped all 4 to keep the game 1-1. The second period, the Lightning were the ones to make the 2 plays to give them the lead. And the Hagel goal, we had glorious chance for the Lightning, very good chance for the Stars, glorious chance for the Lightning goal. It happened like boom, boom, boom. So Cirelli gets open in front. Onger stops him, point blanker. Stars counter. Rantanen sets up Sam Steele for a tip play. Vasi makes the save. The Lightning counter again, attack the offensive zone. Cirelli drops it to Radish. We have said Darren Radish has one of the hardest shots in the NHL. So that shot can go in. If it doesn't go in and a non-goalie is blocking it, that could hurt. Sam Steele blocked the shot. He was out of the play. You could see like he blocked it and he was like, oh, he fell to the ice. He couldn't get up, right? Kucherov got the puck. Now you have a situational advantage because Steele, who's really in the middle of the ice, he's in the right defensive position, but he's out of the play. So the Stars are now in scramble mode, and Kucherov slips it to Hagel, he's like a little bit behind Ottinger. So he has an open net. And Esa Lindell almost saved a goal. Like he got his stick in the way. Hagel tried to shoot it in. Lindell stopped it with his stick, but Hagel didn't give up on it, and he like muscled it in.
Right.
So now it's 2-1. Next big play in the second period, Lightning take a penalty. Chernak was not happy about this penalty call. It was interference, but he felt he was cross-checked by Jamie Benn. Benn and Chernak had something going in the second period, which one of the advantages of calling a game off a monitor is that I'm literally watching, right, every replay that TV puts up there, so you could really see how the two of them were going at it pretty intently. Benn cross-checked Chernak. Chernak wasn't happy about it, that there was no call made. Seconds later, he interferes with Rantanen. He gets the penalty. This power play for Dallas was way more dangerous than the first power play. And Vasi was outstanding. He made 3 saves, including a point blanker on Hintz right at the beginning of the kill. He made a great play with his stick where Wyatt Johnston's trying to pass it across to Rantanen, who would have had a backdoor open net goal. And Vasilevsky is the goal he's supposed to do. If the puck comes in the blue, that's the goalie's responsibility on a cross-ice pass. Vasi used his stick to poke check it away, and then the Lightning got it away from a dangerous area. They survived the kill, but the Stars got some juice from that power play. They had 2 really good ozone shifts in a row. One was against the goal line, which didn't spend a lot of time in the defensive zone, but in that particular sequence, they couldn't get it out, and the Stars held it in.
Right.
And then the Lightning sent out the quote-unquote new fourth line with Bjorkstrand, Finley, and Paul, and they couldn't get the puck out. They were struggling to get it out, couldn't clear. Stars held it in. Second period's the period of the long change from your defensive zone. Lightning finally get the puck out, and Wyatt Johnston got greedy. He got greedy. His line had been out there. He's like, I'm catching the Lightning. They can't get a change. I'm carrying it back in. Darren Radish makes the play there. He stands up at the blue line, poke checks it off Johnston's stick. Now the Stars are caught. Because the Lightning, it's the period of the long change from the defensive zone, but it's a short change to the offensive zone. And Gensel and James have just jumped over the boards. Bjorkstrand's still out there, but he gets the puck, pushes it forward. You get a 2-on-1. It was not a good play by Wyatt Johnston. He should have dumped that puck in. Go for a change. He's right by the bench. Or just go in on the forecheck.
Right.
Tried to carry it in. He got stripped. So a lot of times we talk about, the Lightning got greedy for offense. Stars were down 1. They were like, we want to get this game tied. We've been applying pressure. That was a key mistake and a big play made by Radish. It leads to a 2-on-1. Gensel to James. James takes a one-timer. I thought it was important that he took a one-timer. It's not an easy one-timer because the puck is kind of coming to him on a diagonal. But he made sure he got his stick on it for a quick shot. And Andre made a pretty good save, but Gensel follows up and puts in the backhand. Now it's 3-1. And this game is a completely different feel. And in the third period, we talked about it. The Lightning absolutely locked it down. Kind of led by the gourd line. They do this so well. They make the other team play in the defensive zone. And it's always effective. Like, if you can do that, it is always effective. But it is especially effective if you have the lead. It is also effective if the game is tied. Because you're not letting the other team go on the attack. It is good, but let's face it. These 3 guys are not, 30-goal scorers. If you're down, they are capable of scoring. But really what they do is make the other team work in the defensive zone. Gergensen scored a huge goal against Colorado in the Lightning's last home game. So I'm not saying it doesn't happen. But when you have the lead in a game and it's in the third period, the Lightning send out that gourd line, and if things are going to continue going to plan like they have basically all year since these guys have been together, they're going to get the puck into the offensive zone, and they're going to keep it there. And they had 2 or 3 shifts like that in the third period. You could just see, the life was getting drained out of the Stars' push. The best they could do was they iced it a couple of times. There was one point where Steele, who was okay after blocking the Radish shot, was so frustrated with the second icing, he slapped the puck. It hit Moser, and you could see Moser turned around and was like, "What are you doing?" And Steele was like, "Sorry, I didn't mean to do that. I'm just frustrated that we iced it again." The frustration level was off the charts for the Stars. When you do that to the other team, you've got them. 2 shots for Dallas in the third period in a game where they entered the third period down 2. They had only 11 shot attempts in the entire third period. That is an outstanding lockdown, closeout third period. So that was a big part of the win. But just as big, the Lightning answered the early deficit, and they navigated through the second period where they made a couple of plays, and Dallas didn't. And part of that was Vasilevsky, who had a much quieter third period, but had an impact certainly in the first two. That was the Dallas game to me. A very, very solid win against a quality opponent that was hungry coming in, and end of a long road trip for the Lightning to produce a game like that, phenomenal. And I'm curious to see as Point recovers from his injury, who knows if he's going to get into a game before the Olympics. I mean, we're hearing maybe some conflicting reports, like maybe he will be able to play in the Olympics. If so, is he going to be able to play before the Olympics?
Right.
I am looking forward to seeing Dominic James settle in a top six, because I think they're going to keep that together for now, see if he can settle in. If he has another game like he did against Dallas, he's going to play in the top six.
We floated this
until Point comes back.
I think we like,
and then maybe even after Point comes back, who knows?
We like James in a top six role.
Yeah.
The question I think for Julian will be, do you feel confident in that potential move to not want to go out and make a move to address what I have said?
The Julian question is a separate question, because I don't think James doing well in the top six is going to affect Julian one way or the other, because when Point comes back, James is a center, so he's replacing Point. I think to me the question is John Cooper going to keep James there?
It's more about, I think, probably just identifying another top six, which we have alluded to. So
That's
I think James, could he be in your top six? I think you and I like a lot of tools in that toolbox. I thought what was interesting on his goal was the ability to finish.
Yeah.
That's kind of been, what's the comparison you and I have kind of floated out there a little bit, is that, and maybe in fairness, maybe James hasn't had the looks that Point did his rookie year when he was getting all of those looks and just not finishing. James has had some. Felt like Point had a lot.
James has had fewer.
That's probably
been on
the way.
Fourth line. But I will point out, Greg, so I mean, when you say finish, like that was a shot off the rush that beat the goalie. Would Ottinger like that one back? Who knows? Maybe it was short side. It was kind of in that area, though, that we talk about, above the pad, under the arm. The previous goal that James scored, though, was the Lightning's blowout win in San Jose. That was a beautiful finish. That was a little different because it wasn't off the rush. That was that play where he got the puck in front and he outweighted the goalie and made a little stick handling move and tucked it in. So, I don't know. I mean, maybe it's... I am not coming out of these last 15, 20 games for James saying James is getting all these chances and he's snake bitten and goalies are robbing him. And maybe he needs to do something a little different to finish. I think it's been more that he hasn't gotten as many chances based on opportunity. He's not playing power play. He's certainly not playing penalty kill. He's playing fourth line minutes. And he's not playing with Jake Gensel, right? He's not playing with Kucherov. So you put him with those guys, you figure based on his speed, his hockey IQ, his tenacity, his willingness to shoot. I mean, Phil talks about it a lot. James looks to shoot. He's going to get more opportunities. Let's see if he starts to finish more regularly. Tell you what, the Gensel goal, that was a pretty good save by Ottinger on a tough shot from James.
Yeah.
That was in the same spot where he scored. Actually, it was on the other side. It was glove side. But it was above the pad, below the glove, and Ottinger just, like, he was able to kind of wedge his arm against his body and stop it, but he couldn't control the rebound. That's how Gensel was able to jump on. Gensel had a great finish there. A backhand just inside the post. But that shot from James could have gone in. That was a pretty good save from Ottinger. So we'll see if that continues and he's able to finish with more regularity.
That is true. And it just stood out, the finishing ability for James on that particular play, because just to put a bow on that, that's been the one thing we've wanted to see a little bit more of. I mean, look, that's a tough angle. Not sure if that's a save the goaltender needs to make at that moment, but still, you have to be able to put him in a situation where you got to make that save. And that was a great finish. The other thing too is I think you hit the nail on the head with Radish's play, the poke check.
Yeah.
You know, so much has been talked about his play offensively, and that is true. But you cannot be a liability defensively and be thrown out there as much as he has without being better from that perspective. So I think when you take a look at Radish's play this year, there are a lot of reasons why he's playing at the level he's playing. And maybe first and foremost, partner, it's because he's getting the playing time. Fair point. But I think while he may not be J.J. Moser on the back end, he is playing pretty well on the back end too. And I thought that was a nice little subtle play, just a poke check, and it helps lead transition-wise for the Lightning to go back the other way. So that to
I
me
just
stood
checked the
out.
play-by-play, by the way, right? He had been on the ice for about a minute, and that was a hard shift in the D zone. He hung in there, and he made the play that was the first domino to fall for the Lightning to get that counter chance and score a big insurance goal.
It was a big one. I want to get this read in before we get to more of the game and just in general, if you want to hit on anything before that as well. Tonight, enjoy some Reef Rum, smooth, versatile, and now pouring at Benchmark International Arena. Order a Tropical Wave or a Lightning Mule and taste why fans are switching. Reef Rum is a premium craft Florida local rum built on authenticity, quality, and easy drinkability. Ask for Reef Rum by name. Go Bolts. Enjoy responsibly. What did you want to go to next, partner, here when you start talking about the Lightning? Is there any other...
Well, we can get into the St. Louis game. In some ways, the St. Louis game, the Lightning played better than in some of the games that they won during the win streak.
Yeah.
I mean, more than in some ways. I think that they objectively played better against the Blues than they did against Montreal in their home win, for sure. Montreal played the Lightning, and I think the Lightning actually played better in St. Louis than in some of the coin toss games that were fairly even. I mean, the Pittsburgh game was fairly even, right? From beginning to end.
Yeah, for sure.
I think the Lightning outplayed the Blues more than they outplayed the Penguins, but Joel Hofer was the difference. The third period was more even, but the Lightning really leaned on St. Louis in the first two. And, the first goal against the Blues had nothing going in the first period until they scored their two goals. And the first one was the result of a lucky bounce where there's a block shot and comes right to a guy at the side of the net. It was an open net, Jake Neighbors. The second one, the Lightning had a turnover. And Bukestad's a good shooter. Like, he's always been a good shooter in his NHL career, and he got it in a dangerous area and snapped it under the bar. Other than that, the Blues really didn't have much going until the third period. They had some looks in the third. They had more of a shooting mentality. That Vasilevsky was strong. And then overtime was overtime. I mean, the Blues had some looks in overtime, but it's 3-on-3. And they were due for a win because they were 0-8 in overtime shootout games before they finally beat the Lightning in a shootout. But I think if you look at, how did the Lightning defend? They defended well. They didn't make many mistakes. They had one that ended up in their net, and they had some bad luck on the other that ended up in their net. Did they do enough to score more than two? For sure they did. Hofer was outstanding. And as beleaguered as the power play has been through much of this season, and it has gotten hotter since the second week of December, the power play saved them in that game. By the way, the key play in that game, or at least one of the key plays in that game, was the penalty taken in the offensive zone by Nathan Walker. When the Lightning were about to be 0 for 1 on the power play, the puck was in the Tampa Bay defensive zone, and Walker commits a stick foul on Bjorkstrand. So the Lightning got basically a lifeline there on that power play. So instead of the penalty ending, which it was 12 seconds away from ending, it was in the Lightning's defensive zone, and Walker was battling to possess the puck. At best for the Lightning, Bjorkstrand comes up with it and tries to counter, but power play is going to end. Instead, there's a whistle, offensive zone face-off, Lightning get a 5-on-3 for 12 seconds. And we just talked about Nick Paul. He had a mistake in the Dallas game, but he won the face-off on the 5-on-3.
Yep.
If the Blues win the face-off and shoot it down the ice, the Lightning don't score in the 5-on-3. Maybe they do score in the 5-on-4, but Paul won the face-off. Second period, bench is close to the offensive zone. He goes to the bench. Hagel jumps on. Hagel and Kucherov a give and go. Kucherov shoots it in. 5-on-3 goal because there are 4 seconds left on the first penalty. So that means the Lightning get to stay in the power play. Huge. And then Bjorkstrand scores from the slot. That's how they got the game tied at 2. So the two key plays there, certainly the goals being scored were key. The Walker penalty and then Paul winning the faceoff. If either one of those things doesn't happen, the Lightning do not tie the game there 2-2.
Mm-hmm.
But once they got it tied, it was like a brand new game. And they kind of played in the third period. They kind of played in a way for overtime. They wanted to make sure they didn't give up any freebies.
Right.
But the first two periods, Hofer was the difference. I mean, the Lightning easily could have scored 5 or 6 goals.
You run into that sometimes, right?
You run into that. Yeah,
it happens.
He played very well.
2 power play goals, you'll take it. On a night when they were a little bit better in the faceoff circle than their opponent.
Yes.
I mean, statistically speaking, which always hasn't been the case. You and I have kind of talked about that
including
over and over
yesterday, 29-19 Dallas.
I don't want to make more of this because there are so many things going well to nitpick, and maybe that's probably the wrong word because I think you and I both agree faceoffs, they aren't just some small part of the game.
No,
they aren't. They're a really big part of teams and how they're able to control play and how they're able to effectively maybe kill off a penalty or escape danger after a bad icing call. However you want to quantify it, you and I, along with others who follow this game, know that faceoffs are a big deal. I think sometimes fans, we overlook it to a degree because it's not sexy. But I do think, particularly in the playoffs, when you are hypothetically going against better teams who are probably more buttoned up than teams who didn't make the playoffs, that's going to be a potential problem.
Yeah.
And I would hate for the Lightning, who, by all accounts, let's say whoever they're playing, whether it's in the first round, whether it's in the third round, or in the Stanley Cup final, partner, where you look at the roster and say, I think the Lightning actually have an edge in the roster makeup, in talent, in nets, but they weren't able to win the face-off component of this series, which led to their exit. And I don't want to overblow it, but it hasn't gotten better, and I don't know what to do about it other than I do think it needs to be addressed. The question is, where do you go to address it?
Yeah.
That's really, because I don't think you can ignore it.
I mean, you don't want to replace the Lightning are playing so well as a team. You don't want to really replace anyone.
I know
who's a center.
I agree.
But missing a righty, other than Finley, who doesn't have a lot of experience, hurts. The other team knows it. They're putting Cirelli on his weak side. They're putting Gord on his weak side. To an extent, they're putting Paul is the one guy who's over 50% and doing pretty well this year. But they got all these lefties, and on key draws, when the other team can pick the circle, they're putting the Lightning centerman on his weak side. And Hintz is very good. So Hintz was excellent yesterday. He was the one guy that was like dealing for Dallas. So that margin of, there weren't a lot of faceoffs. 29-19 is not a heavy faceoff game. So Dallas was plus 10 in the circle. Hintz was plus 9. I think he finished 13-4. I can actually look it up. See what Hintz finished. 12-4. So of the plus 10, Hintz was plus 8. Right. So most of the other guys on Dallas were just around 50%. Hintz took a lot of faceoffs lining up against James, and then James was thrown out. Mm-hmm. And Gensel had to come in and take it. And I don't think Gensel won a faceoff. I mean, Gensel is capable of winning faceoffs, but that's not Gensel's forte, right? I mean, like, all those years in Pittsburgh, he barely took any faceoffs, even though his natural position when he was drafted was center. He's basically been a winger in the NHL. So you would prefer to have James hang in there and not get thrown out. Phil asked him about that.
Phil did, yeah. He gets a little jumpy, right?
Yeah, well, that's what James said. Yeah, I mean, he was being politically correct there. I mean, between James and Hintz, if you don't think experience matters, it does. Hintz is a top face-off guy. He's been in the league for how many years? 6-7 years. Linesman's like, yeah, kid, you're out. Right?
Get out. And I wonder, and we can move on to another topic, but I am curious if the Lightning don't make a move to address that part. Is it because, and it could be both, I'm just curious which one maybe it's more of. Was it because they couldn't find somebody? Or was it more of, we feel like internally we can be better, and we're not going to try and find somebody to fit into this if it's not going to be a complete fit.
I think if Julian can find somebody who will help their team who happens to be a right-handed, and I'll use that caveat, right-handed.
That's fair.
Because if you get a good lefty and that player is put on his weak side, he might be marginally better than what the Lightning are getting right now, but that player is still going to be. Would you want to spend the money spend the money? It's sometimes not money. Spend capital on bringing a player in who is not filling this very specific need. So it could be a lefty. It would more likely be a righty. I think Julian is going to add someone if he feels it'll help the team, which is what he always says.
Yeah.
You can add a right-handed faceoff guy, and John Cooper doesn't have to play that player. Just because you get the player doesn't mean you have to play him every single game. Maybe you get into a series. Let's say one of the fans was like, what are they going to do against Toronto?
Right.
Toronto's a lot of lefties. Matthews and Tavares specifically are two of the best in the NHL. Maybe in a series like that, you're like, okay, nameless right-handed face-off guy, you're coming in, and we're going to use you in this very specific role against this specific opponent. So,
yeah,
I mean, there's always that possibility too. So I don't think Julian would say, you know what, I don't think that we can fit this player into our lineup, so I'm not going to make the move. I think if he feels the player can help, he's going to make the move.
I want to get to a couple of questions here to round out the show. And again, we are taping. If you want to react to anything, you can at Bolts Radio. Bolts will be back on home ice tomorrow, then back on the road and kind of navigate the waters there. But this was from a couple of days ago. Boomer said to us, partner, power play idea. Why doesn't Cooch move to the left circle? Then we can have Geeky or Hagel or whichever lefty we want at the right circle. Basically flip the power play on its head. Wouldn't that theoretically make it easier for Kucherov to grab pucks off the boards too, since it'd be on his forehand? Just an idea. Curious your perspective on it. I know it's all about Kucherov and what he wants. Has he ever addressed the few times they've put him over there?
Well, they have put him over there, Boomer.
Yeah.
And the power play hasn't worked as well. Sometimes it works a little bit. Kucherov doesn't need to be on his forehand to pick pucks off the boards. He's the best player in the NHL at doing that. He practices it a lot. So a hard rimmer on the boards, he can pick it up off the boards on his backhand. The issue is more that on the left side of the ice, more is closed to Kucherov. On the right side of the ice, more is open to Kucherov. But it's not like they haven't tried it. They have at points. And sometimes they throw him over there just to mix things up. But right now the power play looks pretty good. So why would they want to change it?
It's trending in a positive way. It was, 14th, I think, heading into the game yesterday.
Yep.
And look, if you
they
were
went 0 for 2, but still, it wasn't a huge.
Does it have a chance to be in the top 10 before the year ends? And
Possibly.
would you take a top 10 power play? Sure, you can quibble and say it should be in a top 5 considering all the talent, but some of that talent's been injured this year.
Yeah.
As well. And for whatever reason, it's been a little bit of a mystery, but I think it's trending in a positive direction. UCF Bolts fan says, guys, we got to go for Trocheck just to make sure he doesn't end up on our rivals. I know that you started to see that big board.
The Rangers have said we're going to start trading. I'm not sure they're trading Trocheck, though.
Were you surprised?
They're not going to trade everybody. I don't know.
For sure.
I mean, they're having issues. They did have a win in Philadelphia. Philadelphia is sinking like an anchor. Yeah. Remember when the Lightning saw Philadelphia? Philadelphia had not lost back-to-back games in regulation. It only happened once, and that was it. 2 games. Yeah. Now what have they lost? 5 straight? The Lightning handed them those 2 regulation losses. They haven't won since, and they've had some bad lopsided losses along the way. Having said that, the Rangers are in very, very bad shape in terms of their standings position, and it sounds like they are going to be sellers at the deadline or before the deadline. They're not doing a rebuild. They're doing a retool. But a retool also means that you're not going to trade everyone, and Trocheck is an extremely valuable player.
It feels like that team never really adjusted after letting go of Trouba. Kind of, when they did that, and just it felt off, and they really have never recovered, and maybe this is the blow-up that they needed. Of course, Panarin is a guy that I think could probably help somebody out. Now, he
I think
comes
he's
at a pretty high.
Moved because
Yeah,
they've said they're
he's a-
not going to extend him.
He's a dynamite offensive player, as
Yeah.
we know. And I think Zibanejad's another one who has been floated around there in terms of probably their
And
two
he's
biggest
having,
guys.
I mean, I don't know that he's having a great offensive year all told, but not every time, but I noticed that he's had some big games.
Yeah.
You know, he had what did he have, a hat trick in the Winter Classic, and
He's a good player. I don't know
He's a
if
good
he's ever
player.
been, for me, like a great player. I always felt like he'd be a good, really number two. I think
he
with
is
the
a very
Rangers,
good face-off guy, though, and
He
is
is.
a righty,
He is.
Yeah.
And,
as is Trocheck.
I did want to ask you, did you have any initial thoughts about Anderson going to the Golden Knights for
Look, I
White
like
Cloud?
Anderson. I confess, like, I haven't seen Rasmus Anderson play a lot because, he's been out in Calgary. Lightning see him twice a year. But the people that scout in the NHL see a lot of him, and they like him a lot.
right?
So, Vegas, this is kind of the MO of Vegas. Vegas is not shy, never been shy. Golden Knights.
They don't
about
rebuild. They win now, don't they?
Swinging. Yeah.
I mean,
They gave up a number of draft picks, some high draft picks, but Zach Whitecloud, who was kind of their
Pretty good player,
bottom.
right?
Yeah, but he was in their bottom pairing, basically. So they probably feel that this Anderson is more than a bottom pairing guy.
and I guess his metrics are, again, we don't have a chance to see him a ton, but metrically, his offensive numbers, still pretty good. And I think this speaks to, I think they wanted somebody to complement Theodore a little bit over there too,
Yeah.
and play a lot of minutes. So whatever, they're winning.
Well,
they're winning now.
The year that they won their cup, their decor was off the charts solid.
Yeah,
Now, some of that decor, like Pietrangelo is out of the league, basically injured. Alec Martinez is out of the league. Nick Hague is in Nashville, and frankly, he hasn't had the same season in
Right.
Nashville that he had when he was playing for Vegas. White Cloud was part of that. But you look at their decor now with Anderson. You got him. You got Theodore. You got Brady McNabb, who's a rock-solid defensive player.
good.
You got Hannafin. That's a
pretty
pretty
good.
good
Yeah,
top four.
it's pretty good.
Yeah.
And we know in the playoffs, usually, your top four is going to
Yeah.
be playing a lot of minutes. It's interesting. Chris Johnson, after that trade on the Athletics site, partner, I guess, did his updated players where he would rank them, in terms of potentially being traded. And there are some good names. Number 5 on that list, Luke Shen.
Mm-hmm.
I will go back to this when I don't know if there's another player who's had more of a bounce back part to his career than Luke Shen, particularly when the Lightning got him. Was it the first
Yep.
time around? I mean, like,
Yeah.
they got him, and I want to say he was in the minor leagues for San Jose
In
maybe at that
Anaheim
point. Or
system,
Anaheim.
yeah. The year before.
And then they got him, but like ever since then, every team
Mm-hmm.
I think has valued him.
He's been scratched a bit this year, though, in
He has.
Winnipeg, which is
He
maybe
has.
why he's one of those names mentioned by Chris Johnston.
Coleman and Stamkos are 9 and 10 on that
Yeah.
list. So
I don't know if Nashville's going to make a move at this point.
yeah, that's hard
Stamkos
to
is
tell.
having a good year for them in terms of goal production,
He is,
and
It's
they
kind of
are
a
in
bounce
the
back.
mix. They're in the mix to get in the playoffs in the West.
You look at the Lightnings. Is there a better? I mean, you probably could make the hard argument there that what's going on in the Central, the top 3 teams there between Colorado, Dallas, and Minnesota, pretty impactful. But in terms of points, Tampa Bay, Detroit, Montreal, I don't know if people look at those 3 teams, and I know that changes from week to week, if they are on the same level as Colorado, Dallas, and Minnesota. But, I mean, the Atlantic Division is turning out to be, is it maybe the most competitive?
Well,
I mean,
the
at this
fact that
point-
the teams from top to bottom are just rolling. Yes.
I mean,
I thought you were going to go somewhere else, though. Like the Lightning have played Colorado and Dallas during the
Yes.
stretch. They maybe caught Colorado exhaling a little bit, but
sure.
that's the team that they saw when they saw Colorado. The Lightning outplayed Colorado. They outplayed Dallas in these 2 games. I thought they outplayed Dallas in both games against the Stars this year. They outplayed Dallas in the game in Tampa, too. They haven't yet seen Minnesota. But against arguably the top 2 teams in the West, the Lightning have showed quite well. during this point streak.
They have played very well, and I don't know if it's a surprise to a lot of people, but I think the way they've kind of handled their business has been pretty exciting. Pretty exciting stuff collectively. This question comes from Dale. He's asking, where do you think James slots in when everybody is healthy? Kind of speaking to our point.
You know how much I love those questions. I think when Point comes back,
he's going to be there.
Yeah, I mean, Point and Sorelli are your top two centers.
Bob wants to know, who do you think are Bjorkstrand's best line mates at this point from what you've seen?
He really has not gotten going 5-on-5 still. I mean, we're starting to see some glimpses in the power play. He's got, 7 goals and 6 have come on the power play. And in the bumper, he is dangerous. I mean, he scored a beautiful goal against St. Louis. But once he scored that, when the Lightning got a third power play in the third period, they were like zeroed in on Bjorkstrand. They weren't. The Blues were. They wanted to make sure he didn't get the puck again. I don't know. I don't have the answer for that. Right now, he's sliding in on the fourth line because the rest of the lineup is really humming along.
By the way, you're going to love this because I just opened it up to The Athletic. And, I have the Lightning as one of the teams to follow. And anytime there's anything mentioned by the Lightning, it goes into that specific page. 10 potential Artemi Panarin destinations. And
Cooch would love that. Cooch would do a happy dance if he could get Panarin at the left circle.
So this would at long last be my key point, because I don't know if you remember this in Columbus when Panarin was there. I was making the push to get Panarin.
Yeah,
it was a big go get him because he was available. Obviously they didn't, but they say this about the Lightning with Panarin. Tampa Bay probably has some appeal for Panarin, but multiple hurdles stand in the way. Cap space is a big one, with no way for the Lightning to fit him without shedding significant salary. They don't have much to offer in return. I kind of disagree with that, but with no first-round picks until 2028 and a prospect pool that ranks among the NHL's worst, that's where I think, how we talk about like national people trying to evaluate teams specifically. That one,
because somebody else did a prospect ranking, and they're just looking at where is the Lightning's.
Yeah,
ranking, right.
do they have? I mean, name a team that has a great minor league system at this point. In the top 2 or 3 with high draft picks. No, but I don't think anybody that knows hockey would look at the Lightning system and say they don't have much. I actually think they do. It says we can't completely rule out Tampa Bay because it seems like such a desirable destination, especially considering the Russian star power of Kucherov and Vasilevsky. GM Julian Breezewell always seems to be going for it, but this one feels like a long shot. By the way. Let me be very clear to the people who wrote that article. Kudos to them. I get you have to. That's part of this. I could have written that. I could have written that and said it's such a long shot, but there wasn't much research done on that one, by the way.
No, and really one part of that is going to be a wall that is very high. I was going to say a 12-foot wall, but some people can climb over a 12-foot wall.
So if you're going to write that,
the cap part. That's the part.
But you need I want a quote or two from some GMs, maybe off the record or not off the record, but it's anonymous. And I need you to start, okay, yes, here's what he's making. Here's who would have to be dealt. You gotta, we're not like that. That's clickbait a little bit. But I think if you're going to write an article like that, anybody could sit there and say, well, Julian Breezewell has always taken some swings, and Panarin may feel like a long shot because of the cap space, and the Lightning don't have a deep draft pool. Probably wrong on a lot of those accounts. Give me some names. Do a little more homework on that.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that would be a little bit more informative rather than I'm just going to throw it at the wall. Probably take what some other people wrote about the Lightning's minor league system. And, that's kind of where we are. Come on.
Look, we're not involved in any of the discussions that take place internally among Lightning management.
Surprisingly, for Lightning fans, we're not.
Yes, and other teams.
Yeah.
I just think that in order to get a player who has significant salary restrictions, let's use that word, and you're restricted from the standpoint that you have to move out a lot of money to make that work, the way the Lightning are rolling right now, do you really want to make a significant change and move out big time money? I don't know. It's too bad. I mean, in the one sense, the injuries have really opened the door for some of these other players for the Lightning to take huge steps forward, and it's been as much a part of the story of the season as anything. On the other hand, it is unfortunate that the injuries have eaten up all of the available cap space the Lightning thought they were going to have.
That's true.
So Julian is going to be limited. He's going to have to get creative again, and you can only get so creative because there's no third team option for deals this year.
Now, another
it can
team
only be 50%.
I was going to say that's part of it, right? You can get creative. The other team's got to swallow that much, probably, to make any type of deal of that caliber.
Like the Lightning, when they acquired Yanni Gordon, only picked up 25% of his remaining salary.
Right.
Because they got
still get paid.
Involved.
Still get paid. Just another.
Well, you
team
still get
out.
paid, right? But those teams that are like the team that picked up the 25% might have been Detroit. Maybe Detroit got something. Yeah, the Lightning made a separate deal. Mm-hmm. In an exchange, Detroit's like, we have the cap space. We'll pick up the 25%.
Yeah.
To make this deal happen. I don't know. I mean, we're going to see more of this as we get closer to the deadline. Of course, we have the Olympics in between, so we may not see a lot of it until the Olympics end, and then we're going to see a whole bunch of it leading up to the deadline.
It'll be fun.
Yeah.
It'll make this show must listen to for Lightning fans if you're already not listening to it. All right, so tomorrow we will break down the Lightning and Sharks.
Yeah.
And
Sharks are a competitive team. Do not be fooled by the ease with which the Lightning dispatched San Jose in the first meeting.
Yep. A lot of
I
talent.
mean, they've had a few blowout losses, San Jose, but they've been competitive in a lot more games than they've not been.
Yep.
So they play the Panthers tonight, actually. The one home game the Panthers have during the stretch of 9 of 10 on the road. And then San Jose comes to Tampa for the Tuesday game.
Panthers at 53 points in 47 games. 4 points out of that last wild card.
Yep. So a back-to-back. So the Lightning will be seeing the Sharks on the second half of a back-to-back.
See how it plays out.
Yep.
All right, partner. Great job, as always. We'll do it tomorrow live.
Actually, I think
we got a tape?
We talked about pre-taping tomorrow, yes.
Okay. We're going to pre-tape. We're going to pre-tape.
Well, that was what Steve said to me. So,
all right. Whatever Steve says.
Operating on the fly here.
Yeah. This is I would say live radio, but it's not. We'll figure it out. Well, there will be a show tomorrow.
There will be a show tomorrow.
We'll break it all down for you. Partner, great job as always. We will talk to you tomorrow. Thanks to Steve Versnick and Jared Johnson. Thank you for listening. You've been listening to Power Lunch right here on Lightning Radio.